instance, if you use this sidereal formula, is an R of 42,164.17 kilometers. That's measured from the center of the Earth. So always keep that in mind. I always specify what I want in the problem. There's a difference between reporting an orbit in terms of altitude versus absolute radius. And I'll specify which one I want. I don't care which number you give me as an answer on a test or homework, as long as you specify what it is. This leads to really silly answers on tests like orbits that, like, the spacecraft has to plow through magma in order to complete the orbit because they're confusing an altitude with a radius. This is the radius. The altitude, the Earth's radius is about 6,380 kilometers. So that would make the altitude about 36,000 kilometers if you're reporting from the surface of the Earth. So you'll see that number bandied about in papers and textbooks. But that's the magic height. If you put that spacecraft up at 42,000 kilometers from the surface of the Earth, it will hang in the sky at the exact same point. Well, okay, there are three conditions, actually. If you make the orbital period a sidereal day, you have a geosynchronous orbit. It means the orbit will repeat itself every day, but unless it's a circular orbit, which is a condition that we just now described that equation using circular orbit, so we got a circular orbit answer for the radius. And it has to be equatorial, aligned with the equator so that it tracks around. If you do those three things, geosynchronous, equatorial, circular orbit, then you have a geostationary. Earth orbit. And that's three conditions. The orbit has to be circular, geosynchronous, one sidereal day, and it must be equatorial. It cannot be inclined. There are actually a lot of useful orbits that are geosynchronous, but not the other two. Or maybe geosynchronous is circular, but not necessarily equatorial. They would not be geostationary. They would trace out a path in the sky or beyond the horizon during the course of the day that would repeat itself every day, but would not be fixed. Why would you want to do that? We'll learn why we want to do that in a couple lectures. There's actually a lot of degrees of freedom and interesting design parameters for this type of satellite systems. Okay. Now, that number, that magic number of 42,000 kilometers, gives us a really nice taxonomy for talking about spacecraft that orbit the Earth. So let's say I've got the Earth down here. I'm looking out down from space. Here's my Earth. We have these demarcations, largely based on this number. So let me write it in terms of an altitude here. This is 36,000 kilometers above the Earth. Imagine this is a cut of a sphere that encapsulates the Earth. This over here is this line that I've drawn down here. Imagine this is a 1,500 kilometer encapsulant of the Earth. If a satellite is below this line, we call it a low Earth orbit. Or if you are a seasoned satellite engineer, you just call it a LEO. If you are circular up here, and you're equatorial, this marks the boundary of geostationary Earth orbit. Geo. If you are in this region in between, you are at medium Earth orbit. And if you are beyond this, we call this high Earth orbit. Okay. So those are the three classifications. Low Earth orbit, most of our spacecraft either go one of two places. You get put in a circular geostationary Earth orbit, or there's a ton of them just zipping around in all directions in low Earth orbit. Why are there so many in low Earth orbit? Well, there are a lot of applications that benefit from low Earth orbit, things like surveying and photography and all this other stuff. And also, it's a very inexpensive orbit to launch something into. Launch costs are largely dictated by how much mass are you putting into orbit and how high the orbit is. Things get very expensive once you get beyond low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit is the lowest possible orbit, so let's put all of our satellites in there. You can get them talking to one another and provide global coverage just by launching a constellation into low Earth orbit, rather than sending it all the way up to geostationary Earth orbit. Now, there are some applications where geo is preferred. You want that fixed position, for example, in the sky, that all the TV users or all the dish owners or the feed people that are trying to intercept your feed to tune their dishes to, turn them to, and relay a signal. And there are some applications that aren't quite as common, but there are plenty of applications for medium Earth orbit. GPS, for example, all GPS satellites in the navigating constellation are in medium Earth orbit. Well, what's the trade-off there? Well, they're a little bit more expensive to launch than in low Earth orbit. What do you get by going up here to medium Earth orbit, which you don't necessarily have for a satellite zipping around down here? Let's see, so more coverage time. Yeah. Also more coverage area, too. Both of those are good reasons. You see more of the surface of the Earth the higher that you go. I mean, if you went to infinity, you see the 2 pi sphere radius of the Earth. These guys down here, they only see, they gain a signal. No matter how wide the antenna gets, they're only going to cover a certain portion of the Earth. And they're probably only going to be in view for 10 or 15 minutes, depending on what part of the Earth and exactly how high you put them. You might have even seen satellites like this one, a really clear night, not in Atlanta, because like if you go to an island somewhere, you can look up at the sky and you can see fast moving thing. Like, you can almost mistake it as a really high altitude airplane, but they're usually fainter than that, and they zip across the sky. You can see, they last maybe they'll be in the sky for 10 minutes and they're going from horizon to horizon. You'll almost never launch anything useful to higher orbit, because there you've got the worst of all the worlds. It's not stationary with respect to an observer on the Earth. It's the most expensive place to launch, because you've got to get overcome the most potential energy. And so what you find is that high Earth orbit users are a lot of the scientific measurement missions use high Earth orbit. If you're studying the solar wind, for example, or maybe you're observing the Earth's magnetosphere or something like that. If like NASA launches stuff into here, but commercial ventures tend to avoid high Earth orbit. And so if you could look, if you did a scatter plot of the Earth and where all the orbits are, you'd find that the whole low Earth orbit area is just littered with satellites. Literally littered. And then in medium Earth orbit, you have gravitational navigation satellites and other applications. And then there's this dense band. So like over here, you got North America, a lot of the satellites up here, geostationary Earth orbit. And not so many over here. Then Asia, you pick it up again. Europe. Nobody watches Star TV over the Pacific, so there's not much out there. That's kind of what it looks like from space using this technology. Okay. Any questions so far? Perfect understanding? Oh, yeah. So a geosynchronous orbit, questions to explain what a geosynchronous orbit exactly is. If any orbit, circular or otherwise, equatorial or otherwise, that has a period, any orbit about the Earth, that has a period of 1 sidereal day, 23 hours and 56 minutes. As long as you satisfy that, it doesn't matter what the shape of the orbit is, it's geosynchronous orbit, because it will repeat itself exactly 1 sidereal day. The sky track, you can imagine it this way, the sky track, you can see the satellite at all times. The path that it traces out in the sky always closes in on itself. If it was not geosynchronous, it would do its thing, and then the next day it would be at a different spot, and then it would do another thing, and then it would change from day to day with respect to the observer, instead of just minute to minute. Now there are some other types of synchronous orbit. For example, there's something called a sun-synchronous orbit, which again means that the satellite may do multiple passes, but during the course of the day it will repeat itself. I forget what the exact radius is for low Earth orbit in the sun-synchronous orbit. I don't have that example worked out in my notes. There's a lot of different things you can synchronize in orbit too. Some are kind of semi-synchronous. They repeat themselves every half day, every half of the sidereal day. I'll show you an example later on when we study elliptical orbits of an orbit that does that. Elliptical orbits. Very succinctly, I'll just write them on the board so that you have them in the notes. The orbit of any smaller body about a larger body is an ellipse with the larger body's center of mass at one of the foci of the ellipse. That's Kepler's law number 1. The second one, I'll just put them all up on the board right now. The orbit smaller body sweeps out equal areas in equal times. And 3, the period of the orbit is a function of the semi-major axis of the ellipse and follows this formula. G squared, the same theory that we derived for the circular orbit earlier, is actually 4 pi squared a to the 3, I'll explain what a is in a second, divided by Kepler's constant, GMP. And that's it. If you know those 3 rules, you know everything you need to know about in this class for elliptical orbits. Now let's review a little bit of high school geometry just to figure out what these actually mean. Kepler's first law requires you to be able to parse elliptical geometry. So let's do that very quickly. An ellipse has a short side and then 90 degrees, so that has a very long side. The long side is called the major axis. And the short side, 90 degrees to the major axis, is the minor axis. The intersection of the major and the minor axis is called the center of the ellipse. Not to be confused with the foci, which symmetrically are a distance off the center, depending on how eccentric the ellipse is. Now, the first law says that the planet is going to be on one of these 2 foci. There's a focus over here, a focus over here. The planet's going to be one of these 2, and then the body takes this path around the planet. This distance from the minor axis to the end, this is what we call A. We call this the semi-major axis, half of the major axis. And in most textbooks, this dimension, the semi-minor axis, is called B. If you have a measurement of the semi-major axis and the semi-minor axis, you also have a measure of the eccentricity. So eccentricity, E, is a unitless number. And when you multiply it by A, the semi-major axis, it tells you what fraction of the semi-major axis you have to travel down to get to the focus. So both of these foci are EA apart. E is always between 0 and 1. If E is 0, you're dealing with the circle. The 2 foci collapse onto the center, and what that means is that the semi-major axis and the semi-minor axis wind up being the same. So you get a perfect circle. If eccentricity is 1, then you've essentially got a straight line instead of a ellipse. You stretch the ellipse to infinity in one direction. Or equivalently, you smash the semi-minor axis down to 0. Mathematically, another interesting property that an ellipse has is that from focus to any point onto the ellipse and back to the other focus, that total length is 2A, no matter where you go on the ellipse. It's a mathematical definition of that particular conic section. Okay, any questions so far? Doing good? Okay, so that's the geometry of the first law. We're going to put the planet on the focus. Whatever orbits that planet has to be an ellipse of some shape. The second one, the orbit of the smaller body sweeps out equal areas at equal times. So here's my planet. Here's the center. My ellipse looks like this. Should be a symmetrical ellipse. Okay, the spacecraft, well, what's actually going to happen here? Okay, so in space, the drag is negligible. So everything actually observes these pristine dynamical equations to a remarkable degree of precision. And what you have is this object that's perpetually exchanging kinetic and potential energy back and forth. As it gets closer to the planet, it's going to speed up because it's giving up potential energy. As it moves away from the planet, it's slowing down. And that's really all that Kepler's second law states, except it does so in a very elegant and quantifiable manner. It basically says if you take an interval of time, just pick any interval, 10 minutes. If I start here and observe the spacecraft for 10 minutes, and I make a pizza slice in this elliptical pizza, and I look at how much pizza I've got. And if I perform the exact same exercise over here for 10 minutes, I get a much weirder looking pizza slice, but it winds up being the same area. And no matter where I take that observation for the same amount of time, I always get the same amount of area out. Very cool principle. And you can kind of see why, as the orbit gets highly eccentric, what that's really saying is that up here at the high eccentricities, I'm moving very slowly. So I'm moving very slowly, and then as I come around the back side of the planet, I whip around and come back up. And I whip around and I come back up. Slow down. Now, where is the satellite going to be the fastest? Well, think of it like it's the closest. And it turns out the closest point on an ellipse, if you look at our geometry, that's going to be along the semi-major axis over here. And I can even write a formula. V theta, the nice thing about at this point, the path, the trajectory of the orbit is perpendicular to the semi-major axis. One of the only points on the ellipse that this actually happens. And so there is no r component of velocity. There's only a theta component of velocity. There's actually a nice little formula for that. It's the square root of gmp, 1 plus e, divided by the semi-major axis times 1 minus e, whatever your eccentricity is. So that's actually very nice, because if you want to code up a dynamic simulator of your orbit, you're looking for a nice initial condition to give it. You can calculate this pretty easily for a desired orbit, and it only gives you the theta component. There is no r component of velocity. You kind of set your simulator into motion at that point, and watch it rise and then fall, rise and then fall. Now compare that to the opposite end, when you're on this part of the major axis, all the way over here, at the highest point, and in that case, my velocity, theta, is going to be equal to gmp, 1 minus e, over a times 1 plus e. You see, all I'm doing is flipping the minus and the plus signs. So it makes a big difference. As you get a very eccentric orbit with e approaching 1, my velocity down here is enormous compared to my velocity up here, which becomes very slow. And that's really what Kepler's second law says. Another interesting consequence, we can calculate the entire period for this orbit, but if you actually want to calculate the period from like point 1 to point 2, that's actually a challenging computation to do analytically. You have to resort to a solver or some special functions that require special evaluations. However, if I want to go from one major axis to the other, 1/2 of a cycle, what's the period? What's the period? Well, remember, equal area sweeps out equal time. So if I go from here to here, and I sweep out this area, and I go from here to here, and sweep out this area, then those areas are pretty much require the same amount of time. I know that the sum of those two times is a period. They're going to be equal, and so even though it's very difficult to track the time from arbitrary points on an orbit, from 1/2 of the semi-axis, the major axis to the other end of the major axis, is always the same, whether you're falling into the planet or you're rising up away from it. That's a helpful one. I'll use that in an example in a few minutes as we work through these problems. Now, I haven't introduced this terminology yet, but even points on the ellipse, when they're applied to orbits, have very special names. When you're at the lowest point in Earth orbit, down here, what is that called? You probably know this already. What's the word we use for that? Okay, aerospace engineers, this is your time to shine. What is it? Periapsis. Oh, you're using the general term. I like it. No, not this. I said, what is the closest point to Earth? But he knows the. Have you taken the orbital mechanics class already? How nice. Now, you're a couple of your teachers stuff. So, the general term, when you are at the lowest point in an orbit, that is periapsis. Lowest point. If you are at the highest point, you are at apoapsis. And you will never use these terms again in your life as an electrical engineer. For two reasons. First of all, most of you probably won't go into really hardcore astrodynamic design when you get out of here. The second thing is that you're never orbiting something in the abstract. You're orbiting specific things. And when you orbit specific things, it turns out that you use a different word for each specific thing that you're orbiting. So the most common thing in this class to orbit is the Earth, right? This is where we live. This is where most satellite communications take place. And in that case, the periapsis is called the perigee. And the apoapsis is called the apogee. You got G instead of apsis. Okay, now this is going to be a technological, it always goes badly when Professor Durgan tries to do something technological. I'm going to attempt in this room for the first time to use the document camera here. I don't even know if I can do this. Let's see. Light. And power. Power's always good. Okay, let's see if we can. Oh, this is excellent. Thanks, Sean. Thank you. Good job. Oh, look at this. It's all frames and everything. This is taken straight out of Wikipedia without shame. So it turns out that everything that you orbit that's different has a different name. You know, this is one of the rare instances when the engineering profession or the physics profession starts to resemble the legal profession. You know, where you take your profession and you enshroud it in some dense, pointless jargon to keep the outsiders out. Look at this. Everything that you orbit, if you orbit the moon, well, okay, let's take a simpler example. If you orbit the sun, the periapsis is actually the perihelion, and the apoapsis is the aphelion. If you orbit something like the moon, you notice that there's even like competing terms. Oh, is it the periselene, periscythian, perilune, aposelene, aposcythian, apoloon, Jupiter, perisine, perijove, apozine, apojove. Two different competing terms. My favorite is this one, the black hole. We've never sent anything in orbit around a black hole. And yet there are three competing conventions. Perimelasma, peribophor, or perinegricon versus apomelasma, apobopher, aponigricon. I blame the science fiction writers for that one. So, be careful. You will probably hear me make this mistake once or twice during the course of this class at least. Well, we'll be orbiting something other than the Earth, and I'll accidentally call it an apogee or a perigee. Do you aerospace engineers make that mistake too? It's fine. If you kind of say no, okay, that's fine, that's fine. So anyway, that's my one use of the document camera. It's about as multimedia as we get in this class. Okay. Let's do an example using elliptical orbits. Here's a problem. We've got the Earth. It pains me to say this, but I once had a student in this class ask me and say, well, how do they get spacecraft into space? And I had to pause for a second, and I had to say, rockets. Does everybody know that? They need a rocket to get into space. We'll talk a little bit more about rockets in our next lecture. But you launch a satellite into space with a rocket. And all satellites start off in low Earth orbit at some point in their trajectory. They're launched into space. They're beyond most of our atmosphere at that point. Keep in mind that the atmosphere does not magically stop at some altitude, but it tapers off gradually. You know, it gets at 35,000 feet. You already got pressurized the cabin in your airplane, but it still tapers off quite a ways away. But you still get residual drag even at hundreds of kilometers above the surface of the Earth. But at some point, you get high enough where the drag is negligible and you can make lots of stable orbits around the planet without having to re-energize the orbit or propel it as such. And then, if your final destination is one of these higher orbits, at some point you've got to engage another rocket stage and propel your spacecraft to a higher Earth orbit. So, this problem, we are going to start off at R1, a circular low Earth orbit of 1,000 kilometers. And we want to wind up in a medium Earth orbit of R2 of about 20,200 kilometers, which coincidentally, or not so coincidentally since the instructor engineered the problem, is the altitude of a GPS satellite. So, how do we get there? We're orbiting here, we got to jump into this orbit. Well, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Nowadays, people talk about things like ion drive. We actually have some launches in that where a small, low-powered ion drive that provides very little force, but can do so continuously for a very long amount of time with relatively little payload weight, little fuel weight. And in that case, what happens is that you slowly, over the course of days, spiral up until you get into medium Earth orbit, in which case this ion drive shuts off and disengages. And voila, there you are, medium Earth orbit for the rest of the satellite's useful time. There's another way to do it, and it burns more fuel. At a particular point, you fire your thrusters. Maybe just under your stove, not enough to really move appreciably. It's almost like an instantaneous kick of energy. And that launches you into a higher energy orbit. And you start off at this point, but you've got more kinetic energy at this point, so you're going to wind up being in an elliptical orbit. And if you time the amount of energy right, you can make it so that your apogee touches the desired orbit that you want to get into. So your energy is at your original circular low Earth orbit, and your apogee is at your final medium Earth orbit. And when you get up here, you got to give yourself another rocket thrust in the backwards direction to kind of propel you forward, push you forward, so that you circularize the orbit. You bring your velocity up so that it matches the velocity of the equation that we put on the board 30 minutes ago for a circular Earth orbit. You're going to be short of that velocity, you just stay in elliptical orbit. So with two controlled burns, you can do a very efficient transfer that takes only half a period of the elliptical orbit. Now, this has a special name, this orbital transfer. Aerospace engineers know this as a Hohmann transfer. And so my question to you now is, what's the period? How long does it take to get from this point to this point if I was doing a Hohmann transfer for a GPS satellite? So let's go ahead and figure it out. First of all, I did it again. Look, this is R1. This is a radius. I need to add 60 kilometers to get a radius. 1,000 kilometers is the altitude of the low Earth orbit. And likewise, if this is to be a radius, we got to take an altitude, and I got to add 380 kilometers. The word of the problem, which I did not repeat on the board, is in altitudes, not radii. So I've got my two radii. About 7,000 kilometers here. I'm going up to 27,000, 26.5 up at medium Earth orbit. How long does that take? Let's ask a couple questions. How long does it take with the eccentricity of the orbit? So, we know that perigee is equal to A by semi-minor major axis times 1 minus E. And that apogee is equal to A times 1 plus E. Why is that true? Well, remember, the Earth is going to be at a focus. The centroid is at a focus. The R value, R1, of the perigee plus R of the apogee for this orbit, if I drew it correctly, they should be equal to, the sum of those is twice the mid-semi-major. advanced students, you know that theoretical physics is all about casting our concepts about the real world into rigorous mathematical form, for better or worse. And but theoretical physics doesn't do that for its own sake, but it does so in order to fully explore the implications of what our concepts about the real world are. So to a certain extent, the spirit of theoretical physics can be cast into the words of Wittgenstein, who said what we cannot speak about clearly, that we must pass over in silence. Well, we have concepts about the real world, and it's not possible to cast them into precise mathematical form. That usually is an indicator that some aspects of these concepts have not been well understood. So theoretical physics aims at casting these concepts into mathematical language. But then mathematics is just that, it's just a language. And if we want to extract physical conclusions from this formulation, we must interpret the language. And that's not the purpose or the task of mathematics, that's the task of physicists. That is where it gets difficult. Again, mathematics is just a language, and again, use Wittgenstein, he says the theorems of mathematics all say the same, namely nothing. Okay? And so what does he mean by that? Well, obviously, it doesn't mean that mathematics is useless. This refers to the fact that if you have a theorem of the type A, if and only if B, A and B being propositions, then obviously B says nothing else than A does. And A says nothing else than B does. It's a tautology. Okay? Now, of course, mathematically, logically, it's a tautology, but psychologically, or for understanding of A, it may be very useful to have a reformulation of A in terms of B. Right? So, with this understanding that the mathematics just is a language for what we want to do, the idea of this course is to provide proper language for theoretical physics, and certainly for the 4 courses we have heard so far. So the aims of the course, or the aim, the overarching aim, is to provide proper mathematical language for classical mechanics, electromagnetism, quantum mechanics, and statistical physics. Now, so these subjects we studied in the modules 2P1 and 2P4 here at Erlangen, like many other universities. And obviously, we're not going to revise all the mathematics that are needed for these 4 subjects, but rather we will develop mathematics from a higher point of view, that we can now approach that you have some prior knowledge of these subjects. And so far,
$151円。
in electromagnetism, the space in which you work, or in quantum mechanics, the physical space over which you construct your Hilbert space, and so on. All these spaces are certainly sets of points. That's the coarsest structure of such a space. It is a set. But what precisely is a set? Well, once you lure oneself into thinking one understands a set, and saying a set is a collection of elements. That just raises the question what a collection is. Certainly better than behind manifolds, and certainly behind differentiable manifolds, because differentiation, the charts are parts of RD, like R2, for instance, and so you understand differentiation in the chart, and we will lift the notion of differentiation as we understand well in the chart, we lift it to the general concept of differentiation on the manifolds. That's already the entire philosophy.
Well, the difference between how the manifolds for roughly the same, right?
Roughly the same chart is the technical term in this case. That's right. Okay, so we'll certainly come to that. Now, once we have differentiable manifolds, maybe already before, we'll come to a notion which, well, in some sense, is yet another structure, but it's bundles. So the idea of bundles is you take a manifold, and you take another manifold, and to each point of a given manifold, you attach another manifold. You do a bundle. We have a vector bundle where each point you attach a tangent space, and so on. And bundles are a very important concept in geometry, in differential geometry, and indeed much of modern physics can be understood or can be carved into the language of bundles. So it's true for particle physics, but also for gravity, and so on, certainly for quantum mechanics. So actually about already here, we will learn that the notion of position vector should be forbidden. There is no such thing as a position vector. Doesn't matter how often it's repeated, there is no such notion. Now, in bundles you learn there's no such thing as a wave function in quantum mechanics. You get away with the notion of position vector unless you look too closely, and then it fails. And the same is true in quantum mechanics. You get away with the notion of wave function, but then it fails. In fact, the wave function is, a position vector is just a collection of coordinates, but they do not constitute the vector. And the wave function in quantum mechanics is not a function at all. It's a section in a complex line bundle over physical space. You cannot understand this, but you will at the end of the course. So these notions are needed if you really want to say what's going on. Now, okay, so once we have bundles, or maybe also alternatives to bundles sometimes, so don't take the picture too seriously, it's a rough idea of how this building is constructed, we'll have geometry. Geometry comes in this structure. So that could be symplectic geometry. That would be the geometry of classical phase space in mechanics, but actually it's a much bigger subject because for virtually all dynamical systems of interest to us, the phase space is equal to the symplectic geometry. There may be a metric geometry. This is certainly the case in electromagnetism to a certain extent in geometry, just in the volume form. And certainly it's the case in relativity, and especially in general relativity, you need the so-called Lorentzian metric. This is a structure that sits on top here, but you need to understand more or less all of this in order to really professionally deal with geometry. Well, and then to complete this, then when I promised you that all these different subjects you learned about before, so up to here, it's just physics and mathematics, but then up here, it's physics, classical mechanics, electromagnetism, quantum mechanics, statistical physics, and special relativity and general relativity. All of these physics can be understood, and can be properly understood by mastering all these mathematics.